Welcome to The Explainer. I'm Pi.
And I'm Nick.
For today's Explainer, episode 136, we are diving headfirst into a truly bizarre situation at the heart of our economy. You've got big tech creating these phantom billions of dollars in the AI industry, while for pretty much everyone else, the economy feels, well, broken. We're going to show you exactly how those two things aren't just happening at the same time, they're directly connected.
So here's the game plan. First, we're going to tackle this $100 billion paradox in the AI world. Then, we'll pull back the curtain on an accounting trick called round-tripping that's making it all possible. From there, we'll look at the tale of two economies this whole thing is creating and introduce you to a concept called a plutonomy. And finally, we're going to land on a pretty chilling question. What happens when you just don't matter anymore?
All right, let's start with the mystery itself. The world of AI is just buzzing with these financial announcements, and the numbers are so huge they almost defy logic. Seriously, we're talking about figures that used to be reserved for the budgets of entire countries, and now they're just getting tossed around by a couple of companies. It's a paradox that really needs an explanation.
I mean, this quote just captures how absurd it all is. How in the world can a company like OpenAI, which is famously losing an incredible amount of money, suddenly be in a position to buy $200 billion worth of anything? You know, with normal math, it just doesn't add up. It's not possible.
And then you look at the other side of these deals. You've got NVIDIA. This insane demand for AI chips has rocketed it to become the most valuable company on the planet, with a market cap hitting $4.6 trillion. That entire valuation, every single dollar, is built on the promise that this AI gold rush is not only real, but that it's going to last.
But then, look at the reality for one of its biggest customers. Before OpenAI even thinks about buying one of those super expensive chips, it is burning through more than $1 billion a month. They're just incinerating cash to keep the lights on and the models running.
So this brings us right to the core question. If the key players, the ones at the center of this boom, are losing money hand over fist, where are these phantom billions actually coming from? The answer is, well, it's pretty concerning.
The answer to that question lies in a practice with a long and pretty notorious history, especially when it comes to tech bubbles. It's a mechanism that creates the illusion of massive growth and revenue, even when there's no new money actually coming into the system.
The practice is called round-tripping. And let's be really clear about this. It's not some clever accounting strategy. It's a form of securities fraud. It is designed, from the ground up, to manipulate the market by painting a completely false picture of demand and financial health.
So how does it work? Okay, imagine three businesses. Business A gives business B $100. B turns around and gives that exact same $100 to C, and then C gives it right back to where it started, at A. See what happened? No real value was created, but now all three of those companies can book $100 in fresh revenue. And in the crazy world of AI, where valuations can be 50 times revenue, that one fake $100 bill just created $15,000 in market value, completely out of thin air.
And look, this isn't just some textbook analogy. It is happening right now at a scale we've literally never seen before. Just look at this loop. Microsoft invests billions in OpenAI, which then pays that money right back to Microsoft to use its data centers. Microsoft then takes that money and buys GPUs from NVIDIA. Then NVIDIA invests in OpenAI, which uses that money to buy more NVIDIA GPUs. It's a giant, multi-hundred billion dollar money-go-round between a tiny, exclusive club of tech giants.
And you know, this isn't some newfangled trick. Back in the dot-com bubble, AOL was doing this to pump up its revenue. A few years later, broadband companies like Global Crossing did the same thing with something called capacity swaps, basically trading phantom internet capacity to create phantom revenue. The playbook is old, but the scale of today's AI round-tripping, it's just completely unprecedented.
Okay, so this brings up a really critical question. If all this money is just being passed around in a closed circle at the very top, what does that mean for everybody else? What is happening in the real economy? You know, the one that most of us actually live in.
This is the great disconnect. On one side, you've got the AI economy, which is absolutely booming. We're talking trillions in new wealth. But on the other side, the consumer economy is busting. Credit card delinquencies have doubled. Almost 70% of the population is living paycheck to paycheck. We are literally living in two completely different economic worlds at the exact same time.
And this isn't just a feeling, right? It's right there in the national data. Out of the roughly $530 billion in estimated US GDP growth this year, about $400 billion of it comes directly from big tech spending on AI infrastructure. So if you take that one piece out,
the rest of the entire massive US economy is barely growing at all. It's essentially flatlining.
And for the people who are actually inside that flatlining economy, things are getting dire. I mean, this statistic is just staggering. A quarter of consumers are now using buy now, pay later services to pay for their groceries. Let that sink in. People are taking on debt just to be able to buy food.
So how can this be? How can an economy look so strong on paper while so many people are struggling just to get by? The answer is that we're not really operating in the kind of economy we all thought we were. We actually need a whole new framework to understand it, one that was identified almost 20 years ago.
Back in 2005, a leaked report from some Citigroup analysts gave it a name, a plutonomy. It's an economy where the spending of a tiny, wealthy elite is so unbelievably immense that it drives all the headline growth numbers. In this kind of model, the economic health of the quote-unquote average person, it just stops being relevant to the overall picture.
And the data today is just undeniable. The top 10% of households are now responsible for a full 50%, half of all consumer spending. Meanwhile, the entire bottom 60% of the population, that's over 200 million people, they account for less than 20%. The multitudinous many, as the report called them, are barely even a blip on the economic radar.
And that brings us to the end game of this model. When you combine the phantom economy of big tech's round-tripping with the real economy of this plutonomy, you end up at a really stark and uncomfortable conclusion about the economic value of the average person.
First, let's talk about your consumption. The spending of the bottom 60% of the country could literally disappear overnight, and that drop in total economic activity, it would be more than covered by just a modest increase in AI infrastructure investment. As far as the big GDP numbers are concerned, you are a rounding error.
Okay, next, let's consider your labor. Technology hasn't just made you more productive. In a lot of ways, it's made you more replaceable. Your job has been standardized, broken down into component parts. That trend, mixed with decades of outsourcing to keep wages down, has turned much of the workforce into a simple commodity, stripping away the power of labor itself.
And finally, your investments. That whole idea of building wealth through the market, that's a cornerstone of the modern economy, right? But with the top 10% of households owning over 93% of all stocks, the investment power of the average person is, once again, statistically insignificant. You're not really participating, you're just watching from the sidelines.
And this is the fundamental question a plutonomy forces every single one of us to ask. We always just assumed that the prosperity of the many was essential for a healthy economy. But what if that's not true anymore? When your consumption doesn't matter, your labor is replaceable, and your investments are a drop in the ocean, what is your role? It really makes you wonder if an idea like universal basic income isn't just some social dream, but maybe an eventual structural necessity for an economy that simply no longer needs most of its people.
That's all we have for this explainer. The economic forces we've talked about are incredibly complex, but understanding them is the first step. If you want to keep making sense of a world that, let's be honest, often doesn't, please make sure to like and subscribe for more from The Explainer. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Pi.
And I'm Nick.